Welcome back. Good to have you all here. Hope you enjoyed your break. And now we're talking healthcare. Hope you're feeling healthy. We're going to be talking about AI in healthcare, revolutionizing patient care and medical interventions and medical innovations. That's all coming up. I'm going to introduce our panel starting from my side and ending on our moderator at the far end. On my side, Chief Data Officer and Vice President of Health at Vector is Roxana Sultan. The Chief Executive Officer and Co-founder at Metaloop beside her is René Cassi. The co-founder and chief scientific officer at Reliant AI is Marc Bellemare, and the senior vice president of payer and provider solutions at TELUS Santé is Martin Bélanger. And then finally, our moderator here today is the senior director responsible for AI, chief AI officer and Conseil de l'Innovation du Québec. Would you please welcome our panel led by Anne Nguyen. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Merci tout le monde. Bienvenue à Montréal, deuxième journée du All-In. C'est un honneur pour moi d'animer ce panel. You know, AI is ushering a new era in healthcare, enhancing diagnostic, personalizing treatments, accelerating medical research. This session explores how intelligent technology are transforming the patient care, reshaping clinical workflows, and enabling breakthroughs in drug discovery. How is AI actually improving accuracy and efficiency? How does it help in decision-making? What ethical and regulatory challenges arise on deploying AI? And how AI is really sensitive in our context. I'm here with Martin, Marc, René, and Roxana. Just to start, slowly, could you, each of you, briefly introduce yourself, perhaps share one surprising and perhaps maybe counterintuitive way of AI having an impact on your daily context, and maybe have, maybe a common misconception. I'm going to start with Martin.
Thank you, Anne, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks a lot. I run the payer and the provider solution portfolio at TELUS Health. So what we do, we're very involved in different space. We work with private payers, so insurance companies across the country. We do adjudication of claims. We work with public payers, health authorities across the country. We work with every provinces. We sell and resell technology to power their health system. On the provider sides, we work with 50% of all the doctors in a primary care setting across the country, having a software solution that power their clinics. And also on the pharmacy side, we work with close to 50% of all pharmacists in Canada, powering their entrepreneurial business as a pharmacy. So, everything drug-related with software. Good question, very a curveball to start, and misconception about AI. I think most of our clients, when we talk about public payers and private payers, they believe that you need modern technology to enable AI. And with the emergence of agentic AI, this is not true anymore. So we can deploy agent on top of legacy technology, which make migration to a newer software less relevant than only a few years ago. If you've been part of that business for many years, you will recognize that when you do a software migration at scale, it's always more expensive than what you planned for, and it takes always so much more time. So agentic AI come and fix that. And it's very interesting because we're big payers are able to save millions of dollars of investment, and they can deploy much more rapidly. The risk with that is that traditional software, their positioning within that business is weakened. But at the end of the day, they have the reach, they have the clientele, and they have the trust. So by deploying AI, they are able to do more for their clients. What it means for us at the end of the day is that we're working on model context protocol, and we try to connect some software. So we talk about EMR, electronic medical record, and we talk about pharmacy software. Now we can deploy agents that seamlessly build trust and coherence between those distinct platforms, and all of that will dramatically improve care coordination moving forward. So we're in a very exciting time right now.
So you're saying that modern can be made from legacy. That's really hopeful. Okay, what about you, Marc?
Absolutely. I'm an AI scientist by trade. I left Canada after my PhD because there was no jobs in reinforcement learning at the time. Came back in 2017 as part of the Pan-Canadian AI strategy. And it's absolutely astounding the rate of progress that we've seen AI take in the last few years. At Reliant, we're building software, we're building an AI platform to help users systematically organize data at will. And in a pharma context, what that means concretely, if you imagine that you're a biotech, you've been working on a molecule or a therapy for the last 2-3 years, and now you're about to go to the FDA and for the first time figure out what patient population are we going to try to target with this, right? You can come to Tabular and say, hey, Tabular, this is our piece of software. Tabular, can you make me a systematic review of every single drug under development or approved or maybe in preclinical phase for that specific indication. We're trying to figure out what's going on in the market. Help me figure this out. And before we launch into a 5-year journey where we're demonstrating the efficacy of that drug, let's make sure we have all the data in hand to get started. And that to me is the most exciting thing about AI, and also the biggest, I think what people haven't realized is we have gone in the last 3 years from a state of it is cool and it can do nice party tricks, to it is better than us at a lot of things that we can do. And I'll give you a concrete example, right? In software engineering, regularly now, one of our engineers and myself will be writing a piece of code and the AI agent will say, hey, you're making a mistake. And normally the AI agent is more right than the human, right? So there's been a paradigm shift happening in the last 2 years in terms of our ability to or the AI's ability to do work better than us. And this is just a classic pattern in AI, right? We saw this with chess, we saw this with Go, we saw this with protein folding. It's coming now for a lot of the knowledge work, and it's going to really change how we work with this data.
I love how with AI now you can have a dialogue. It's the new normal. Hey, can you do this and that for me? Can you correct this and that? So thanks a lot. Renee, what about you at Mediloop?
Yeah, Renee Casey. I'm the CEO of Mediloop, an agentic workflow company that was firstly created in Silicon Valley, and we just crossed over to Canada last year. I was trained as a surgeon. I practiced surgery here in Canada for about a decade. Actually, while I was a surgeon, created a company, an EMR company, an electronic medical records platform called Medisync that was acquired by TELUS over here a few years ago, 10 years ago in 2015, and then decided to move my family to Silicon Valley to get trained in AI, learn how to properly code and get an entrepreneurship background at the Stanford University Business School, where I am today most of my time. Mediloop is headquarters in San Francisco, but also here in Canada and Montreal, and we're opening up new offices in Toronto soon. So the biggest misconception that you'll see that you'll hear about is that you need to bring all of these disparate data sets together to get them to be used by AI. Data sets here in Canada are in all different buckets. They might be at the DSQ, they might be sitting on TELUS servers or on Shoppers servers. They might be at the government level, at the RAMQ, for example, here in Quebec. But to make sense of this data and to use it, you can deploy agents where the data resides without ever moving it and without ever moving it or bringing it to a common data model. So that's the biggest misconception today, is that you can use AI on very difficult data sets residing in different buckets, being in different formats like OMOP, I2, B2, or these custom data models.
Wow, so you said disparate data set, right? So you don't need to move those disparate data set anymore.
Yeah, exactly. You can work, a user could access data sets from across the country using agents where the agents are the one going into these data sets, crunching the numbers, writing code to make sense of it, and bring it back into that. We're happy to announce that we're going to be deploying on the TELUS AI factory servers, so it's a fully sovereign solution here in Canada.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Roxana.
Great. Okay, is this working? Can everyone hear me okay? All right. So I'm with the Vector Institute for Artificial Intelligence in Toronto, Ontario. For those who are not familiar with Vector, we are one of 3 national AI institutes that were established under the Pan-Canadian AI strategy in 2017. And our mandate is to drive the development and use of artificial intelligence to foster economic growth and to improve the lives of Canadians. And in particular, we have invested a great deal of time and effort into health AI specifically, first and foremost, to drive access to representative, de-identified health data for privacy-enabled AI discovery. And secondly, to enable the trustworthy and safe deployment of those AI models in real-world clinical environments to improve the quality and efficiency of healthcare. And while it's not entirely a misconception, I would say that one of the concerns, and it's a legitimate concern when it comes to health AI, is that these health AI solutions will exacerbate existing inequities or drive biases that already exist simply because a lot of the data that goes into training models can often be biased. And the work that Vector has been doing in this regard is really focused on creating technical solutions to address, first of all, to identify and quantify, and then secondly, to address bias both in the data pipelines that are being used to train the models, but also in the actual models that are resulting from that training process. And a great example of how the work that we're doing at Vector is actually addressing inequity and bias is work being done by one of our affiliate faculty members, Dr. Mamta Bhatt, who's at the University Health Network in Toronto. She had identified that women were systematically disadvantaged by standard organ allocation processes for liver transplant. Often women's symptoms and conditions were not identified as being as severe as they actually are. And so Mamta and her team used deep learning training techniques on complex data sets to create a model that could actually predict outcomes much more efficiently and effectively, irrespective of the patient's sex. And as a result, we are actually driving a more equitable approach to allocation of organs than the standard of practice.
And I think you paved the way perfectly for the next topic about the diagnostic and also clinical decision making. And Mark, from your startup lens, and also Roxana, again, from your perspective at Vector Institute, where is AI truly have an impact on making measurable? And measurable is really important as a word because it's really hard to calculate the benefit of AI. Where do you see it on the diagnostic accuracy and efficiency? And are we still a bit over-promising all of this? How is it embedding itself in the clinical workflow? And what are the examples that best illustrate it? I'm going to start with you, Mark.
Absolutely. At Reliant, we don't directly work on diagnostic, but we absolutely work on accuracy. And it's just incredible to see how accurate large language models are today. I'll give you a concrete example. A traditional part of that drug development pipeline will be to do a systematic literature review to figure out exactly what's been said about a drug or a disease or patient population. And there's a lot of studies that have shown that on average, a single medical writer is about 85% accurate, meaning they're going to miss out 1 out of 6 papers that would have been relevant, or they'll miss some data points, so they'll write the wrong data points in a spreadsheet. At Reliant today, we're at close to 100% recall, so within sample size, we're essentially perfect there, and roughly 99% precision, which means that we've completely surpassed how this was done manually in terms of extracting this data, structuring this data. And that's really a game changer, right? Because humans just can't do this work at scale well. That's going to bleed into diagnostic accuracy. That's going to bleed into a lot of areas, just the ability to continually work on that data. Where, however, we are overpromising today is this idea that the AI will make the decision for you. You know, AI can surface the right data, AI can help you iterate on that process, AI can read 1,000 papers for you when you could have read one paper in the same amount of time, but at the end of the day, it has to give you those choices, right? And say, given the ask that you've given me, this is what I think you should be doing. And then we need to hand it to the human for that final decision. And that's why we take a human-in-the-loop approach to all of our workflows.
That's a great reminder. AI doesn't give decision, it gives result. What about you, Roxana?
Yeah, I would say one of the areas where we're seeing the most significant and measurable impact is in medical imaging. One of the projects that our faculty have led at the University Health Network is focused on analyzing chest x-rays to try to identify pneumothorax or collapsed lung. And the model that we trained using thousands of historical chest x-ray images is now achieving a 96% accuracy rate in being able to detect even the most subtle patterns that might be missed by the human eye. And so this allows us to prioritize the x-rays for radiology review to ensure that the patients who are most at risk are not left waiting too long. Similarly, we have one of our researchers, Dr. April Kademi, has created a model for analyzing MRI images to identify dementia and vascular disease, and more specifically, to identify biomarkers such as the volume, size, and shape of different portions of the brain to differentiate across different types of cognitive impairments, whether it's something as significant as pathology of Alzheimer's disease or cerebrovascular disease, et cetera. And so the ability to drive patient stratification and appropriate targeting of therapies as a result of these methodologies to improve our analysis of radiological results is really driving improvements, measurable improvements in care. And while I wouldn't say that it's overpromising, but very similarly, I would say that the expectation can sometimes be, well, this is fantastic, we don't need radiologists anymore, right? But that's actually not true. These are intended to be what we call a second opinion available 24/7, and never intended to supplant that human capability and support that is provided by experts and clinicians. This is meant to augment and to support decision-making in clinical environments, but not to replace.
Yeah, and Roxana, you mentioned few diseases, and more we're talking about AI and we're advancing on our AI journey, the more we're hearing about personalized medicine and personalized patient care. So Renee, at Mediloop, you're pushing boundaries on personalized medicine, and at TELUS Health, you're working at scale across the entire population. So how can AI deliver treatment that, at the same time, patients actually notice more and more tailored form of, personalized care, and how can we see the outcome and the satisfaction? Could you each share a bit of concrete example? I'm going to start with you, Renee.
Yeah, thanks. So to build on the agentic workflows that we deploy on large healthcare sets, in the United States, we have access to 200 million patient records. About 250 million patient records will be accessible by Q4 this year. When you can send in agents to do the work, you can put very powerful cohorts together. Let's take one of the examples here that we're doing with McGill. McGill is using our platform to study a disease called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS. Now, if McGill tried to go and pull data from their data sets on this disease, there wouldn't be enough patients to study the disease. But what if you could have agents that could go in multiple different silos, multiple different buckets, pull the data without the data ever moving, the data being in the format that it's in, where it could explore the data, write the appropriate code to crunch the case, and come out with the insights. In this way, we believe that you can make discoveries, find new biomarkers, for example, in hours instead of years. And we're actually going to be doing this live on October 13th. We're partners with OpenAI, and we put together a data set of throat cancer patients where we believe that we can go from discovery to writing a full JAMA or New England Journal of Medicine ready paper in an hour or two versus a full year. So the way you get to personalized treatments, like they're doing in McGill for these EDS patients, is to study patients that are the same. And today that's impossible, but with agents that we can send in to study multiple data sets, it's now reality. It can be done.
So not only insight, but actionable insights. So what about you, Martin?
Appreciate the question, and it enabled me to tell you about a good story with one of our major partner. We've been working for the last 2 years with the province of Nova Scotia. And we have an important footprint with electronic medical record in the province. So 18 months ago, Premier Houston reached out and is like, Martin, I need your help. I need to unlock primary care data for my citizens. I want to feed the your Nova Scotia health application to my citizens so they can track their primary care data. That was quite innovative. And it started from the top. So technology is not the issue anymore. Leadership is where things happen. And with that, we were able to unlock primary care data and feed the province through our TELUS Health data platform. It happens because they decided to change legislation. So they modified the Personal Health Information Act. That took a lot of leadership to do. But with that, we were able to deploy FHIR-based data platform. And a FHIR standard is something very important in healthcare. So it's a security standard that everyone's using across the world, very important. And if we're going to do something about data, it has to be in the best standard. And in 6 months, we're able to deploy that and feed the government with that data. So right away, it provided very important population health analytics, and they were able to build new programs for preventative health outcomes. So that was quite a revolution in the country, and we had discussion with a lot of other provinces. But I reinforce the fact that it starts with leadership and the willingness to do things differently. At the end of the day, what happened? Patients are empowered. There's 1/3 of all Nova Scotians that use that application today. 1/3 in 1 year, that's a massive adoption. And 99% of them wants to continue to use it moving forward. So that's real change. And of course, as you can expect, healthcare professionals benefit now from a comprehensive data sets, so they can make better decisions. So what we're working on now, building those agents, we're able to look at our own EMR in the province, but collaborate with others' data sets, just like René mentioned. The data can be everywhere now, and we can create actionable insights. We can notify care gaps at the participant or the citizen level, which will optimize the workflow for the physician. You know, this is quite something, and I'm very excited about this because this is real change, and we're currently working in the discovery phase with our friends at Medaloop to enable that much larger across our portfolio. So this is truly exciting for us.
And I'm hearing that technology needs our leadership. And I think it's a sweet spot for innovation when technology and leadership meet together. And we hear a lot of innovation on drug discovery, medical research. So from your work at the Victor Institute, Roxana, and again with you, Mark, from your startup experience, how AI is reshaping drug discovery and medical research, and not only for a pipeline going faster. I want to hear maybe in terms of months, days, just to see how far we can go on performance and what kind of collaboration between different type of institute we can instigate.
No, it's a great question, and I think one of the opportunities that AI presents, particularly when it comes to medical research, is to drive a much more effective and efficient approach to the traditional gold standard, which is the randomized control trial. So if we think about, for example, the ability of AI to analyze electronic health data to identify which candidates would be the most suitable for a particular trial and to be able to flag those candidates to clinicians, that is a first step to drive a much more efficient approach. Secondly, predictive analytics to identify which patients may be most at risk of dropping out of a trial to support greater retention and improve the likelihood of having a complete cohort as you come out the other end of the research process. Similarly, AI, we're starting to see opportunities to simulate trial design to help us determine the most efficient and effective approach to reduce the cost and time of those trials. And then similarly, from a application standpoint, continuously monitoring patients in a much more efficient way, for example, through wearable technologies, to ensure that we're addressing any adverse events or any risks that may arise over the course of the trial in a very quick and efficient way. And I think one of the most interesting areas for opportunity right now is in the area of digital twins and being able to really simulate the effects of new therapies on virtual patient populations before we get to human trials. And one of the companies in our fast lane ecosystem for startups and scale-ups at Vector is Virdo Health, which I believe is speaking here at All In. Virdo Health has invested significantly in creating digital twins and is one of the companies in our Health Spark initiative, which is a FedDev Ontario funded initiative, which Minister Solomon had announced at Vector not too long ago. And this is really an effort between Vector and the startup to ensure that the digital twin system that they are building is something that is efficient, effective, but also trustworthy and safe for clinical use. And so this particular digital twin approach takes vast population health and makes it context aware and usable for clinicians who want to then use that in the service of medical research. So quite a lot of innovation happening both in the public and private sectors.
And you mentioned the gold standard, and not only the gold standard, but the opportunity to reach the gold standard using AI. What about you?
Yeah. When we think about the impact that AI will have on drug development, there's really two complementary axes, sort of the speed at which we can process information and get the decisions, and the volume of data we can ingest to make those decisions. And so to talk about the first one, we've worked closely with a top 10 pharma company to build essentially a tailored database of epidemiology information. So essentially for every disease in the world, how many people have that disease, how many people will have that disease next year, how is that changing, how does that reflect based on biomarkers. And traditionally that unit that we worked with, to know that information, they would have to make a request to their epi team. That takes, these teams are very busy. They have to go read papers often and put information together. It takes about 6 weeks, right? So you have a question and the answer comes back to you 6 weeks from now. And often that information might be out of date, you've moved on to something else, or maybe there was a deal you were trying to make and it's too late, you've passed up on the deal. With Tabular, we're able to do this in about a day today, so our users can come in and use the software and get the answers in a day. Renee said something similar about the McGill case. So that is dramatically changing the way we work with information, right? The same way that now if we have an argument at the restaurant, I can pull up my phone, go on Google and settle the argument on Wikipedia. We couldn't do this 25 years ago or 30 years ago. So that is massively accelerating drug development just by virtue of getting answers faster. The more exciting thing for me as a scientist is the volume aspect, right? How is science changed the moment that scientists can read 10,000 papers in one day and come to better science in doing this? And we're seeing this already in drug development for teams that are trying to predict the future, right? You're developing a GLP-1 agonist for weight loss or something like this. You want to know how are people who are taking this drug on a daily basis, how are they going to be in 5 years from now, right? And nobody's written a single paper saying that's the answer. So being able to troll all this data and get the right answers is going to be critically valuable in the future. So that's quite exciting.
So more accurate, better science. When we talk about better science, we're talking about trust, and I think each one of you said trust once in the panel. And if we distill the word trust, we have ethical, regulatory, and privacy challenges that comes with the sensitivity of using AI in the healthcare system. So deploying AI is quite sensitive in the context. What keeps you up at night? Maybe each of you. I'm starting with Martin.
Yes, good question. There's a lot of other than my 3 young kids, there's a lot of other stuff that keep me awake at night. But, you know, when we talk about complex regulatory and certification requirements, you know, Minister Solomon mentioned a few things yesterday morning during his opening remarks. First thing he said that Canada needs to come together on this. Well, you know, in the reality of healthcare in Canada, it's provincially powered. And when we deploy software across the country, well, each province have different sets of certification requirements, which make things way more complex. And you know, Telocel has been around for a long time, so we have the experience how to handle that. But you can only imagine smaller startups try to figure it out. It's highly difficult for them. So, you know, we need to move away from 10 countries within one country to expand on that and make those solutions more easily deployed. That's number one. Number two, also what he mentioned, which I really appreciated, is adoption come with trust. So, you know, data breach, a complex regulatory environment, it takes more time to build trust in those issues, right? So, you know, the federal government is doing a very good job right now driving the Building Canada Act of Bill C5, right? Which brings health infrastructure back together and making massive investment in infrastructures. Even though the healthcare is a little bit on the side of that, the philosophy behind it makes a lot of sense when we talk about data interoperability and having access to data insights for provinces. The way that we mitigate those risks, well, you know, there's multiple ways we can look at that, but for us is having standardized FHIR-based solution, so we all use the same security standard. Obviously, when you go to patient, consent by design. We need to remember that nobody owns that data except the patient, right? We talk to doctors, we talk with pharmacists, we talk with insurers and public officials. We don't own that data. So we need to recognize that we're enabling the data for insights, but we don't own it. So the consent mindset is fundamental here. And the third point is like invest in security and data sovereignty. So you probably all saw yesterday, TELUS have announced our sovereign AI fabric out of Rimouski. Well, this is fundamental, the way it's going to power the business moving forward, particularly in healthcare as well, with the sensitivity of the data, right? It's going to be 100% Canadian control across multiple layers of security, data residency, and operational control. So, you know, those 3 main factors for me are really what build trust. So outcomes could be better, faster.
Yeah, so the faster we go, the more safeguards we need.
Absolutely.
And mitigation solution. What about you, Mark?
I like the analogy with the AI adoption as we're seeing it today, especially in critical decision making, as with autonomous driving, right? If you haven't gone to San Francisco and taken a Waymo yet, please do this. It is an exceptional experience, and these cars are now safer than most drivers on the road, right? It doesn't mean that we don't have to figure out how to deploy these systems. So today, the same way, our systems are faster and they're better. They're going to fail in specific situations, and we need to know this. What keeps me up at night is exactly understanding how do we create the right human-in-the-loop format where we can catch the errors that the machine might still make today, will continue to make, and make sure we don't make these mistakes, right? As we scale up these processes, there is, of course, more room for error, and we're in a business where there is no room for error, so let's make sure we build the right framework for that.
So identify the right failure points and that are catchable by human. René.
Yeah, what keeps me up at night aren't these regulatory hurdles. You know, we know they exist, and we've dealt with them for the past 3 years, deploying our stacks on some of the largest and most sensitive healthcare data sets in the United States, and now we've crossed over to Canada. So the biggest risk, in my view, is patient trust. As Martin mentioned, at the end of the day, this data belongs to patients. So we need to ensure that patients understand that their data is not going to be moved around, it's not going to be copied, it's not going to be used to train huge models that might be commercialized by other bigger tech companies. That is scary, and that's going to slow down adoption. So at the end of the day, what's important is sovereignty, is for patients to understand that their data is secure in their clinic, in their hospital, in their provincial government's databases, that it doesn't move around different borders, and that we can use this tech within our provincial borders or within our national borders.
So awareness around data ownership from the citizen. Excellent. Roxana?
Yeah, I think for me, what keeps me up at night is when it comes to trust and safety, we need to ensure that the data that are being used to train models for health AI are good quality data. And I think one of the limitations is that when we have all of these restrictions around access to data, we can't always get our hands on the most representative and large data sets to develop our models. And when we implement solutions that result in inequity or result in bias or result in poor outcomes, we lose trust right away. Like there's, all of the other stuff is ancillary. If things start to fail or not work well, it doesn't matter how much we talk about all of these things, patients are simply not going to trust what we do. And so when it comes to being able to ensure that these models are being developed on the right data sets, on the representative data sets that they need to be developed on, it comes down to governance and ensuring that we have the right governance frameworks in place, we have accountabilities, expectations, minimum standards, and evaluation embedded into the development and design of these solutions. And I think it's often very easy to sacrifice accuracy for speed, because there are a lot of off-the-shelf solutions that are becoming available that may not necessarily have been trained on the populations that you are going to be serving as a healthcare provider. And so ensuring that there is an evaluative step included there to assess and ensure that those solutions are actually going to deliver the level of accuracy that is needed for your patient population is a critical step.
Wow, as we reaching already the end of the panel, and I remember in the call with Renee was talking about, I want a message of hope. So the last question is really about the horizon. So looking ahead, as AI becomes more and more embedded in healthcare, if you have to pick one action tomorrow to build trust, what would it be? And looking 5 years ahead, AI is going quite fast. What will we regret not doing today? So I'm going to start with Martin.
Yeah, so a very good question. So you need to realize at the end of the day that healthcare is part of a massive ecosystem. And there's no one single entity that can drive it all. So that's why it's so complex. So you need to be able to navigate and to partner. In the business, we talk build, buy, partner. I'm not a big fan of building. I'm a big fan of partnering. And that's what Telocel is able to do. Because we have our massive footprint, we don't think we're going to build all the new solutions. But there's tons of startups out there that build something very unique, very powerful. And we're an enabler for them. So, understanding that, make those partnerships essential to drive change. And it's not only private partnership. It's also public partnership. We do something right now with each province across this country. Very unique to their needs, but we're working with them in something very niche. All health authorities across the country wants to have a better healthcare. Nobody that I met are like, no, we're good here. So, you need to embrace that and you need to work with them. So partnership, we're very proud to be an AI startup enabler in this market, We bring our footprint, they bring their spirit. And also transparency. Transparency is trust. You build transparency, people will adopt, we'll make some changes together. And what we need to do today to make sure that over the next few years, things are moving as fast as we can, is that Canada and the provinces need to take care of their public policies. AI is evolving on a daily basis. Last time I looked, provincials and federal policies are not moving that fast. We need to reduce that gap. Yeah. We need to make sure that, just like Minister Solomon and Mr. Joly mentioned, they're going to be there, it's time for Canada to shine. Well, here's a great opportunity to have private, public, and healthcare partnership to reduce the gap of public policies. So every time there's a new technology that can bring massive changes, the policies are there to back that up and make sure it sounds and safe for all Canadians.
Yeah. So the safeguards and also partnership, but all across, inclusive and diverse too.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. what Martin said is absolutely, resonates with me completely. If we think 5 years in the future, we're living in a world where AI is simply allowing us to deal with vast amounts of data that we just can't even fathom today. And to make that happen, for us to really leverage this fully, we need to bring everything and everybody up at the same time. Right? We can't just do this in one place and say the rest will figure it out. Like there's a great, some of you will know this great XKCD comic of how, now I can write a bullet list of what I want to say in my email, and the AI writes the email for me. And on the other end, you have somebody turning the email back into a bullet list. In some sense, that's the future, right? Where the AI is managing this information for us. And so how do we build a system in a way to be designed everywhere to handle this level of information?
And elevate everyone,
Absolutely.
elevate by design. Great, René.
Yeah, so we did talk about a message of hope when we were on the phone call last week. AI is truly changing healthcare. It's changing healthcare for the individual doctors, for researchers, for government. It can be used to offer differential diagnostics that it might have been left off the list. It offers new options and therapies. AI knows about every single paper that's ever been written. Earlier this year, I was diagnosed with cancer. I was treated with surgery, I was treated with radiation therapy, and with my doctors, we looked at all of the literature using AI, and that study we're doing on October 13th in collaboration with OpenAI is a throat cancer cohort. It changed the way I was treated, and it's going to be changing the way future generations are going to be treated. I'm fully cancer-free today, so all's good.
Oh, yes.
Thank you. So, we now have the tools to connect data that was not connectable before. Our data is sitting at McGill, at Sacré-Cœur, at Toronto General Hospital, at Dexcom for your CGM data. Your Apple Health data is floating around on US servers. All of this data can now be used without moving the data. So what we need to ensure to do in the next 5 years is to make sure that these solutions are sovereign. We need to entrust, we need to gain trust from the general public. When I was getting walked back here, I don't know if the ladies here, but as we were walking, she knew we were going to talk about AI in healthcare, and she said, "What is GPT? Who are those people?" So they're not going to trust these models until we educate the population of how exciting this is, how fundamentally revolutionary, or how revolutionary this new technology is on helping us treat patients in the future.
So you're the face of hope today. Well, thank you. We're really grateful you're here with us on the panel today again.
Thank you.
Roxana.
Well, I'm a chief data officer, so you know what I'm going to say, right?
Yes.
I sound like Marsha Brady. Data, data, data. It's really down to, if we have to focus on one thing, it's going to be enabling access to pan-Canadian health data assets in an interoperable way so that we can use these data sets for training of sovereign models that can really benefit the Canadian population. And given the diversity of this country, the models that we train here are applicable at a global level and have this incredible potential to drive discovery that will impact not just across Canada, but around the world. And so, the more that we can enable access to the data, the more that we can make that data usable and interoperable for AI and machine learning discovery, the more likely we are to actually generate benefit from this incredible data that we sit on as a country because of the nature of our public health systems, because of the nature of our population. And I think, the tools that we're building at Vector, we have, for example, a health AI implementation toolkit. We're working on a version 2.0. This is available to the public. We have developed a framework for evaluating health AI solutions for trust and safety. Those tools exist. And so once we have the right data, we can overlay those tools and ensure that all the work that we do in the health AI space is embedded within those trust and safety principles.
Thank you so much. Quelle belle façon de finir ce panel. Donc, on entend faster, but with more trust. We heard data, but with awareness. Thank you again. Merci à tout le monde. Merci Roxana, René, Martin, Marc. Merci à tous. On les applaudit.
Yann.